Welcome to episode 26 of the Necronama.com. Today, we're talking Parasite. This movie is absolutely lighting up awards shows and nominations, and with good reason. We're about to spoil the living shit out of it, so if you're not down with that and you haven't seen it yet, come back when you are, because this is a great episode about a truly fantastic movie. For everyone else, let's jump right in. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I don't speak Korean, so there's no subtitles to this podcast.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, and co-host of this podcast. And same.
I love trying to throw you off with those.
You can't throw me off.
I can try. So joining us today is Shelley Grant from the BS Movies podcast. Her co-host Brian Haas has been on the show a couple times. They're apparently our most popular episodes ever and really, really fantastic, according to Brian. So
those are all been proven true. That's mathematical fact.
Brian's also sitting here judging all of us. All right. So
I'm just here to drink whiskey. So,
all right. So Shelley, tell us about yourself. How did you get involved with the BS Movies podcast? And, why in the world would you agree to come on this show?
Well, I really enjoy you guys. I've seen you guys do panels at Phoenix Fan Fusion, and I've always enjoyed the panels when I've been able to sit on them when I'm not on a panel opposite yours.
That was a fun time.
Yes. So I just enjoy your insights on horror and social commentary. I'm a cinephile and a horror fan, and Brian and I were just friends who we would go to random movies together and then usually spend an hour or so outside the movie talking about what we just watched and fall down these rabbit holes of various other movies. So I got the bright idea. I'm like, well, you know what? We are pretty fucking interesting. So why don't we record this and put this out to the world? And so that is how BS Movies was born. We're in our third year. We started in September of 2017. No, 2016. We started in September of 2016. So almost 4 years at this point that we've been putting up with each other and recording all sorts of interesting things to put out online. And as I was telling James earlier, we have 2 downloads somewhere in the outback of Australia, or 2 listeners that download us pretty consistently, which I'm fascinated by because I think it's probably Mick Taylor from Wolf Creek, who's like just murdering people and listening to us talk about movies, which is that's what I'm hoping for. Or Hemsworth.
One can hope.
Either way, Mick Taylor or Hemsworth is listening to me and will someday come on the show.
That's awesome. Don and I always talk about how weird it is that people in like all over the world download this stuff. And I completely appreciate it. I'm not bashing that in any way. But it is fascinating. Like you open up the stats and you're like on our show, France has like 18% of our downloads. And I would just love to know like how that happened. Like that's fascinating to me. It's not like I was in Paris at some point and I plastered this everywhere, you know? But if anybody wants to bring me to Comic-Con Paris, Don and I are more than willing to come see you, get in touch.
Yeah, our number one city
and I'll try to translate for you while I'm there, too.
Yeah, there you go. I think our number one city is at San Francisco at this point, Brian. Like we've even we're based in Phoenix, and we've surpassed Phoenix at this point. I don't know anybody in San Francisco. I don't have family there.
LA's past Phoenix now, too.
Oh, okay. So
way to go, California.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, like I don't know. That absolutely fascinates me. But yeah, like you were saying about how you guys were hanging out after films and talking. That's basically what Don and I did. We used to do like advanced screenings of films. Like, hey Don, remember the time we got to see Gem and the Holograms?
Stop! I knew you were going to do it. It was either that or Wish Upon.
Wish Upon was so good compared to Gem and the Holograms. But no, so we would do these advanced screenings of films, and then we'd just end up talking forever. And we are both know-it-all assholes, so we had to make a podcast to enlighten everyone else. Yeah, sure, that's it.
Right. No, that's what you do. I mean, that's all of podcast culture, right? It's just
Absolutely.
just all of us are a bunch of know-it-all assholes that think people want to listen to us.
You guys speak for yourself, right?
and we thank you for doing so.
Yes.
No, but so you chose Parasite because,
Yes.
like always, we let the guest pick. Well, almost like always, we did force Brian to do a couple episodes and didn't give him a choice. But usually we let the guest pick the film. So why did you choose Parasite?
Well, I really enjoyed the movie, and I know this podcast is focused on horror, social commentary, and Parasite's not necessarily a traditional horror movie. But I feel like there's definitely thriller elements. I think there's a lot of social commentary in this movie. So I just really wanted to talk to you guys about this and get your insights, because I feel like sort of in this post-2016 Trump era world that we're in, we're now starting to see movies that sort of reflect those times. So we've got Parasite. This year or in 2019, we also had Ready or Not and Knives Out. And Hulu on their Into the Dark series also did a great little movie called A Nasty Piece of Work that's sort of very similar to Ready or Not and Knives Out, of just, especially Ready or Not, where it's these two guys that go to their boss's house.
Played by Julian Sands.
Yeah, Julian Sands is the boss. And he tells these two guys that both want a promotion. He's like, all right, well, how far are you willing to go for this? And just keeps up in the ante with these games. Sort of Cheap Thrills is another movie that does this really well too. So I just felt like there's so much social commentary in Parasite. I just really wanted to talk to you guys about it.
Awesome. So I want to try something that we've never done before. And this is solely because this film is a foreign film with subtitles. Each of us talk about what the theater was like when you went to see this, because I'm especially interested in Don's answer on this one. But what was the crowd like when you were there?
When I went and saw it here in Tempe at the Alamo Draft House. And it was the opening weekend of it, or not the opening weekend, but the opening week. So I was there like on a Monday or Tuesday night. There was maybe 8 people there. And I was the only one laughing. So there's a couple of scenes in the movie that I genuinely found laugh out loud funny, and I couldn't stop, and then really couldn't stop because I was the only one laughing. And these 10 people around me are just like, who is this crazy lady behind me that keeps laughing while I'm trying to eat my French fries and watch this movie? So that was sort of the crowd. So I was with where I don't think they realized what they were sort of getting into. And then, like I said, because I was really enjoying the movie. I was really into it. I thought it was so great. And I thought there's just so many really genuinely funny parts to it it's a very dark comedy, obviously. So that was my experience with the audience. I was with people that just didn't get it. And then the second time I saw it, people laughed. I think it's been out long enough now. People sort of knew maybe what they were getting into. So the second audience I saw it with, I just saw it within the last week, were a little more open to what was happening.
And before I pass this to Don, my experience when I went, it was an entirely female audience other than me. And they were all very clearly there because of award season.
Yes.
And after the film, everyone...
when you saw it in Awatuki, too,
I did
right?
see it
There
in
you
all-white
go.
Tukey.
Yeah. Yep.
But literally, after the film, like, they were all just hanging out in the hallway having a discussion about the social commentary in the film. And I was like, this is great. Do you guys like horror? And they're like, no. And I was like, I'm not even going to finish this. It had nothing to do with pushing my podcast to you. I got to go.
Yeah.
And I left. And that was that. So, Don, what was your experience like seeing this film?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily have the same experience as you guys, but I will say, James, don't let that stop you. because I'm sure one of those people would be more than willing to listen to us, go on for about an hour or 2 hours about films that they probably may have watched and did not realize they were horror. But for this film, I actually had to wait until it was on Amazon Prime to watch, because there weren't any theaters around here showing it. So I got that more intense viewing of it because I just watched it at home, and got to pause it a couple of times and think about some things. So I got that personal theater release where I could actually just go ahead and view it, look at a couple of things that caught my interest, and then think a little bit deeper about at least some of the cultural issues that are apparent in the film, that might not necessarily come out to the traditional Western audience that isn't exposed to at least some trends or social and cultural elements that are within Asia, and especially within South Korea.
Very cool. All right, so let's just jump in then. Shelley, you have a lot of notes, and you're the guest, so when I say a lot of notes, you could literally have one sentence, and you will always have more notes than I show up with. But yeah, so you're the guest. We'll let you lead the way. Where would you like to start?
Well, I think, the biggest issue clearly that comes out of this movie is the divide amongst the classes, because this movie is basically the story of the Park and the Kim family. The Park family is the very wealthy family, and the Kim family are very poor. You see this in the trailer and stuff. They live sort of in this semi-basement apartment, where they're just walking around the house trying to find spots to steal Wi-Fi from other people. There's a line in the movie where their phones have been turned off, so they're trying to communicate and find jobs through like texting apps and stuff. So they're, just not in a great place. Like there's even the scene at the beginning where the windows are open and like the street people come by to fumigate, and they're like, no, leave the windows open so we can get free extermination because they've got bugs in their apartment and stuff. So they're just not doing great. And I also thought it was interesting. I don't know if you guys caught this, but there's sort of an implication, it's sort of in the background, that the mom and dad, and they have college-age children, the mom and dad were maybe athletes, like maybe Olympic athletes at some point, because like you see a medal and a photo of them in the background. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely, I think, a family that maybe at one point had some wealth or some fame, and were doing well, and then life has just taken them another route where they're folding pizza boxes in order to make some money.
Well, and I get that feeling as well from the son's friend when he says like, "Your parents look good," and the kid responds, "They look unemployed."
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. I don't remember the exact wording, but like, so you get that feeling that it hasn't always been this way. It's not an issue of people who have been milking the system or any of that stuff. Like, it's very clearly
seem like they're not afraid to work either.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they want to work, they just can't find work.
And I love that. I think that that's such a much better route to go in this situation. So yeah, continue.
And so they find a way through the son's friend. He's tutoring a high school age girl. He has to leave. He's going to go study abroad. And he's like, look, man, I trust you. Why don't you come and help me tutor her? Or, you can tutor her. And so the son agrees to do this. And then just sort of through their kind of scheming, they figure out a way to infiltrate and become basically the helpers of this whole family. For dad becomes the driver, mom becomes the housekeeper, the daughter becomes the art therapist for the son who's really troubled. So then they kind of then find themselves in this place that has a lot of wealth, and it's sort of comforting to them because it's almost like then they're playing rich, because the family is, the mom especially, Mrs. Kim, is extremely gullible. And I think it's interesting too, and this is a point, and this happens in Knives Out as well, where they're like family until they're not family.
Yep.
So I also thought it was interesting. There's several lines, especially amongst the women in the movie, the older Mrs. Kim and Mrs. Park and the other housekeeper, all calling each other sis at one point in the movie. So because they need something. So I just think it's interesting as you start moving towards the ending of the movie, you start to see the tears and the familiarity. So it's like, oh no, you're great again until you're not. And then
until
realizing
you cross that line.
Yeah. And I also like the contrast and the divide, like Mr. Kim always talking about the certain smell of people sort of lower class. And he's not necessarily saying it's bad. It's just an off-putting smell to him. Mm-hmm. And that plays a really big role as you go through the movie. So there's just so many layers to this and just a lot happening that I'm really excited to hear your guys' thoughts as well.
Don, you want to take this?
Oh man, I got a lot of thoughts.
Okay.
I kind of thought you might.
Because when you mentioned, the friend getting what he assumes the name Kevin, gets him the job, he's like, well, I've never tutored. I don't do any of this stuff. And his advice to him is, just fake it.
Right. Fake it until you make it.
They don't know any better. Just go in there and fake it, pretend that you're doing this stuff. I'll vouch for you. We'll get, this other girl to forge all the documents and degrees so they at least trust you. As opposed to, hey, I have a friend who knows English and can probably help your kid out. Is that okay? It's you have to have all these pieces that give you that access to that life. And even when you talked about their living arrangement, whether this was temporary or they happen to be, living just along the margins their entire lives, you get to see the dichotomy between the Park family and the Kim family heavily.
Yes.
Because they're basically living in a subterranean lifestyle.
Right.
And when the raining happens and flooding happens, they lose all their stuff. But for the Park family, the wealthy ones, it's as if the rest of the world outside of all their rich neighbors and friends doesn't exist. And that's the thing that it's not necessarily off-putting because they're not thinking about anybody else. It's almost as if they don't have to think about anybody else because they don't interact with anybody from, the part of town that the Kims would be from. Because even when the news hits about the flooding and all these people are displaced from their homes, they're still expecting the Kims to show up for work, because they've assumed these new identities. They can't think about where they possibly live or what their circumstances are when they're not driving or teaching the kids or doing therapy with the kid, with the son, or even just minding the home. It gives you this really good indication about wealth inequality, and you can think about even from a Western standpoint within the United States. With the Gilded Age and I think it was Jacob Rhys Davies, I may be getting his name wrong, where the wealthy in places like New York were so detached from the poor that he went around taking pictures of the slums, the tenement houses, the poorer areas of town, and would hold expositions of these photographs for all the rich people. And it was entitled How the Other Half Lives. And the wealthy were shocked at what was taking place within their city. And part of it might have been, some benevolent good. We want to help these people that are poor and are starving. But the other part might have been, holy shit, if they're living like this, they could possibly bring diseases. They could bring all these other elements, crime. It could eventually get to us. And we want to make sure that it doesn't reach us at all. And even you saw the same things taking place in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. With wealth inequality, and even up till the 90s and early 2000s, I would say there's probably some stuff going on now.
Well, and you see that in this movie with, when they kind of manipulate to get rid of the other housekeeper, they convince Mrs. Kim that she has tuberculosis and make it look like she, So then it's like, oh, you're going to bring disease into the house. So, that's how they kind of get rid of her. So they kind of manipulate and prey on those fears. And then, you see interestingly that then when Mr. and Mrs. Park have their sort of sexual fantasy life, that they play into sort of like, oh, you're poor, you're riding the bus, buy me drugs. Like when they start kind of their whole sexual foreplay scene too, it's like, oh, you're a bad girl and you need drugs, and sort of playing it's not, they don't understand that these are real people and that's really happening to them. They think it's just sort of this fantasy.
And that plays into what I wanted to say, which is the staircases fascinate me in this film. Like when Kevin first arrives, he literally has to go up a flight of stairs to get to the level of the parks, right? And everything is about levels. So when Jessica's teaching art therapy, she's on the top floor and she's in charge. Even the people who live there can't come in the room. When they're back in charge of her, she comes down to second floor and they're her bosses again, right? So she's descending back to that level. And you have, the Kims you were saying pretty much live in a basement. We have some other people living in a basement who are also below everyone else.
Yes.
We'll get to that. But even the sex scene you were just talking about, Mrs. Park is like not in the bedroom, and he's like, no, down here. They've come down a level to do this incredibly dirty deed they're gonna do, and they're literally on the level with the Kims at that point because the Kims are right there. Even though the Kims are still down a little bit because they're laying down on the ground.
Floor, right.
Like, there's this constant elevation thing going on in this film, and I find that so great. Yeah. And I really wanted to throw that in. Even, doesn't Kevin have to come up the hill to get to their house before he even goes?
Yeah, that's why I think they were protected from the flood. They're sort of in this elevated, and then you have to get through this gate, so it's almost like they're in this sort of secluded compound.
Yeah.
That they kind of sequestered from the outside world, that they really don't know or understand what's happening in the outside world. And
the Kims they live below the level people pee on.
Yes.
Like it's a problem that people keep peeing by their open windows, you know? And can I just say that
even when they have to go to the bathroom, they have to go up.
Yes.
Because the toilet is elevated in their apartment.
True. Yeah. What a weird toilet, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just a South Korean thing. I'm just saying, as an American, that's weird. I would be like, why is it up there?
I think that's a basement apartment type thing.
I'm picturing my kids coming to talk to me while I'm on the toilet, and I'm up on this great thing on the wall.
Yeah, you're literally on your throne then. You're just listen to me, children.
Right. But I want to say that for everything that the parks have, if their house had been destroyed, I wouldn't give a shit at all. Right? That flood in the Kim's apartment, oh my God, that ripped me up like nothing in a movie has in a really long time. Anyway, yeah.
No, I agree, because that's again, going back to the mom and dad being athletes, like that's what he's saving. That's what's precious to him. So he's saving that. And then what were your guys' thoughts? Because Kevin's friend at the beginning of the movie gives him that rock that's supposed to represent wealth and good fortune. Like that's what he saves from the flood. So do you guys have any thoughts on what that means? I'm still trying to work that out in my head.
For me, I don't know as far as if it happens to be a cultural link, but as far as watching it from the perspective of an audience member, I saw it as just this thing that has false hopes to it. It's going to work out almost like a monkey paw. It's going to work out in a way that you're not planning it, and it's not going to work out the way that somebody told you its intention is.
Okay.
Well, and even like you can take that a step further, because when Kevin tries to use it as a weapon, like he's going down these stairs with this thing ready to use it as a weapon, and I'm like, oh, that is sweet. And then he drops it.
Yeah.
And instead of harming the person, it tips him off that he's there, right?
Right.
And that in and of itself was such a great symbolic twist back to what it is, that it was false hope, and it is a plan that goes incorrectly. Again, you're not supposed to have plans, right? But so, I do love that it came back to basically fuck him over twice.
Right. Well, and let's talk about that scene when after the flood and the family has to go to that gym or wherever they went after they've been misplaced. And then that's when Dad has the speech of don't have plans, don't think it through. Do you think at that point that is Mr. Kim sort of giving up? Because he's been on board with the plan up until that point. And then does he just realize, like, it doesn't matter. We did all this. We planned it out. And basically, we're still fucked. We've still lost everything.
I mean, that's kind of what life has taught Mr. Kim, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it was kind of that despair. I've seen in a few other movies where, the patriarch of the family, sometimes the matriarch, has this moment of clarity where they say, no matter what, we're fucked. No matter what you plan on doing, no matter how good we are in school or, how hard I work, I'm always going to be, I'm not going to be elevated within society. So I think he's starting to realize, like, no matter what, however long we end up working this job, nothing's going to get better for us. Because we literally didn't have anything, and now we have less than nothing. Like, we have no home now. So for me, it was a lot of that moment where he's just completely distraught. He's at the end of his rope, and he's kind of like, kids, I don't want to give you any hope because the world sucks.
And that's the lesson we should all take home today.
Yeah. No. Life sucks. Well, but then the ending, though, can we talk? Well, I guess we've talked about several spoilers at this point.
Let's hit this spoiler. Let's hit the big twist.
You should put like a spoiler warning right at the very beginning. I'm just saying.
No, never. We always say it after. Let's hit the big twist first. So, you have everything that's in the trailers, and we all know how movies work. We know that something else is going to happen.
Right.
When they hit this part where this man is living in the basement of the Parks house, and it's the husband of the housekeeper, thus explaining why the housekeeper has stayed here for so long and why she puts up with absolutely anything and why she's always so happy.
Yeah.
And I love that there's little tiny tips to it. Like Parks saying, I really liked her, except she always eats enough for 2 people. Like, that's such a great twist of phrase. I really adored that. And then you find out it's because she's literally been trying to feed her husband down there.
Yeah.
But her husband's in a very similar position as the Kims. He had a life and things didn't work out the way that he planned. And he ended up, again, in a basement type dwelling, just like the Kims. And the Kims have to protect themselves. So they're willing to sacrifice him. He has to protect himself, and his wife has to protect him. They're willing to sacrifice the Kims. And all hell breaks loose because the lowest common denominators are divided and fighting each other instead of standing up to anything.
Right.
And I don't know if that applies to anything in society today. But
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I feel like there's a hidden lesson there somewhere. Yeah. So I'm very different than you guys. I knew the twist going in, and I absolutely loved it. If you didn't know, how did you feel when this is revealed? Like, were you totally shocked? Like, what were you thinking?
I was shocked because I went into this, I don't want to say cold, but I saw the trailer, and the trailer does a nice job of not really giving anything away. The stuff that's in the trailer is basically sort of the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
Yep. I wish more movies did that.
So when the reveal happens, it was really shocking. And for me anyway. And so I was like, okay, so now we've gone to this other level that now it's just not, they're in the Kim family was in sort of a semi-basement apartment. This guy is in the basement. So now it's another level, as you've been talking about.
Although his toilet's in a normal position.
Yeah, his toilet was in a normal position. Well, that was because it was basically a panic room for a rich person. So
absolutely.
And that's another part where the sis thing comes in when the housekeeper first comes in and she was like, oh, I left something in the basement. She's like, come on, sis, help me out. Just trying to do that. We're sisters, we're brothers, we're family. It's okay. You can help me.
I do love how it immediately goes weird because she's not just pushing it in a normal way to open the secret passageway.
Right.
She's like got her feet up on the wall.
Yes.
She's like 5 feet in the air pushing this
Yes.
thing. And she's like, can you give me a hand over here?
Yeah. Right. And then you understand now it's this whole other room. And I thought it was interesting. The husband's, the way he respects Mr. Park.
Yes.
Versus how Mr. Kim is. Because he's like, oh, he kind of is just deified Mr. Park, right? He was like, oh, he feeds me. I give him so much respect. So that's why he's doing the trick with the lights that as Mr. Park is walking up, the lights come on. And, he's offering his reverence to this man who is feeding him, even though this man doesn't even know he's there. Yep. I think that's really interesting as opposed to what then happens with Mr. Kim and Mr. Park a little bit later in the movie. That, he's revering this, and that play, that reveal, and that is so interesting to me. And then their fight and how they, because then when the housekeeper does figure out that, the Kim family are all related. Like nobody knows that up until that point. Like she figures, and she starts filming them and she's like, oh, I've got, I'm going to hit send and you're done. The gig is up kind of thing. And so now they're having to play off each other again and manipulate each other again. It's great.
What about you, Don? How did you feel about the twist?
The twist for me, I wouldn't say I was surprised, but I wouldn't say I wasn't surprised either. Because I kept waiting. I'm like, I'm waiting for another shoe to drop with this film. There's got to be something going on here because, first off, when the first housekeeper, when the first maid is basically fired for being sick, for me it was weird because, if she's supposed to be like family, or at least she's been working there for so long, as an employer, or at least somebody who's starting to see her as a member of family, it would have been, oh my gosh, we need to get you to a doctor. Let's get you better.
Right.
As opposed to, fuck you. We can, you're replaceable. We'll find somebody else, which definitely feeds into the film because she has to leave. And, when she comes back, it's one of those things of, well, I left something here. I need to get it out. And then you start seeing how all these strings start getting tied together, where the little boy has talked about he saw a monster or a ghost in the kitchen. And for me, that whole idea of that bunker that the designer had built into his home was great, because for the people that are living in that house now, the Park family, it's great to talk about, or at least to illustrate that idea that they are not paying attention to anything that's around them that doesn't affect them, to the point where there is a bunker in their house that they haven't even looked for. Yeah. What the hell do we need? And they don't even know about it. And at least the maid who was staying there prior and is there now, she knows about the bunker. And of course, she's not going to tell them because it works out for her. My husband can stay here. He can be safe. I can go take care of him, check in on him. But yeah, that weird reverence that he had for, or an over appreciation that he had for Mr. Park is one of those things that freaks me out as well, because he's sitting there praying to the man, and he knows what step he's on to where he can push the buttons with the lights. And then he's learned Morse code while he's out there, and he says, oh, every day I send him a message of my appreciation and my love. And, basically, met in Morse code, tapping out, thank you, and I appreciate you, and, all these other things that come out. But for me, the twist itself was the lack of effect that it had on the Kim family. And I mean, as far as like uprooting what they were doing, it provided an obstacle and provided a hurdle, but at no point up until the end do those worlds collide to where the ruse is undone to where they have to leave their jobs.
Right.
It's not done until dramatic fashion at the end when you have this very violent scene and, all hell breaks loose.
Right.
No, I agree. Like, it was hard for me because, like I said, I knew the twist going in, so I wasn't caught off guard by any means. But I literally just, like, as soon as I knew it was coming, I just, like, leaned forward and I started watching the two people next to me. And these two ladies just, like, lost their shit. It was so fantastic to watch. But the thing that I like about this scene, the big reveal scene, if you will, is, they've gone downstairs to get into the area where the entryway is into the bunker. You open the entryway and you have to go down even further, right? So we're back to the stairs thing. But the thing that's causing this door not to open for him so that he couldn't get out of the bunker is the thing that he ends up killing Kevin with.
Yes.
And I thought that was just great, or at least
wounding
Kevin with it. Yeah. And I thought it was great how this movie just consistently puts things places to line them up for later.
Yes. In
a way that is not necessarily expected.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And to go back to the trailer, there's a great part of the trailer where it's like, it does the like, things aren't what they seem or something. I don't know what the exact words, but it's literally in front of the door to the bunker.
Yeah.
In the trailer. But you would never know that because obviously it doesn't look like a door to a bunker or this film would be really different.
Right.
But I love that even in the trailer, they were already hitting these little things to fuck with us, but in the exact same way that they do it in the film, where it looks completely normal and you wouldn't think anything of it until they use it. And then you get that little, oh shit. Kevin getting strangled was the part that got me because it was I knew that something happened, but I didn't realize what. And so when it hit, I was just like, oh shit, that's great. Overall, I feel like this twist is so great that outside of this podcast, I wouldn't tell anybody what it is.
No.
And I mean, even my friends that I know like spoilers, I wouldn't tell them. I'd be like, if you want to go look it up, but I'm not going to be the one to do it because this one is so fucking great. And that's not true for almost any spoiler for me.
This is another reason why I wanted to talk about this with you guys, because my husband hasn't seen this yet. Yeah. So
I'm literally sitting here. The color is draining from my face. And I'm like, what have I done?
I'm like, he's going to love this. And I can't wait to talk to him about it. But every time I want to tell him something from the movie, I'm like, damn it, watch this movie already, man. My question for you guys, because I read a really great article about Parasite over the weekend by a woman named Shay Vassar, who explores sort of the Native American themes in the movie as well.
Oh, cool.
And
yeah.
And because the Park's son, Dasong, is obsessed with Native American culture, and he wears like a headdress throughout the movie. He's got a teepee in his room. There's dream catchers all around and stuff. And the mom, Mrs. Kim, who's so gullible, Mrs. Park, sorry, who's just so gullible, she almost sees this as like, she just sees it as cosplay. And that the director of the movie also said, that was another theme that he wanted to explore, that these things were just decorations and cosplay and not an actual group of people that have suffered.
So really like the full American experience.
Well, basically, yeah. That this is just, they're just seeing it as a part of American folklore, and it's just sort of this thing that represents America and American folklore, but it's not an actual group of people that have been marginalized. So I just thought that was really interesting and subtle, because I hadn't really thought about that until I read the article and then seeing the movie again, that it's just that subtle take on cultural appropriation as we're looking, because we're paying so much attention to the divide amongst these classes, that you also have this, because like the whole end sequence at the birthday party, that Mr. Park and Mr. Kim are going to be the bad Indians and be the evaders, and then Dasong's going to be able to come out and be the good Indian, and it's just going to be this great piece of role play that is horrifying. And winds up being very horrifying and violent. So, just curious if you guys had any thoughts on that as well, or did you, and did you even catch it?
I mean, I thought about it a little bit, but not nearly on that level. Obviously, for me, it was more. It's the same way. Like if you go look at the old Tintin comics, the way that Tintin portrays foreign countries is just absolutely ridiculous, and it's so over the top, and that was the feeling I kind of got from this. Like, this is a thing from America. This is the cool thing that America college girls dress up as for Halloween,
well,
right?
And she even talks about, she's like, oh, I ordered it from America.
Yeah.
So it's great. Like, this is obviously a good thing. I got it from America.
Oh, that's fantastic. But it's that, to me, it was more of this is an idealized America, which is hilarious because it's so bad that would be the idealized America anyway. Right. But that's the feeling I got from it. Don, what about you?
For me, at least that reverence for, or at least that surface reverence for Native American culture, I just sat there kind of scratching my head and waiting for, cringing a little bit on those parts.
Sure.
But yeah, when the mother does have that at least gives that note of, oh yeah, it's from America. So it's almost like, well, this makes it okay.
Right.
We got it from America. But then, the historian in me is sitting there like, this is the problem with, with things with Western films or even Civil War films. Like, there's this crazy devotion to the Wild West mythology and even the antebellum South mythology and all that stuff.
Right.
To where people externally don't get the context of everything that was going on because of the way those things are marketed here, and you end up not letting people talk. But another thing with respect to, I guess, race, culture, things like that, that I had to think about after I finished watching this film, is if you notice the more well-to-do Koreans are much lighter complected, and the poorer Koreans are darker complected. And this is something that I noticed, at least the perspective about race, or at least color, not necessarily race, when I was in Asia over the summer, and there's a lot of skin lightening, or at least a push for making sure that your skin remains light, and it has to deal with classism, because if you have darker skin, or at least you have more of a tan to your skin, it's assumed that you work outside. Mm-hmm. And if you have lighter skin, it means you have money and you work inside. So you have a more professional background to you, or at least more professional vocation. And I saw that with, at least this difference between the Park and the Kim families, where, it's almost like, hey, it's understood that you should be working for me because, yeah, it's great that you happen to be a tutor and everything, but yeah, you're still not on this level. And of course, that gets into the levels of the homes and where the homes are, and then the levels within those homes. But even this idea of where Mr. Park makes those comments about Mr. Kim, his driver, and says, hey, it's kind of strange. He smells like radishes. Mm-hmm. And it's an annoying smell. And it almost seems as though he's making something up to complain about with this guy to differentiate himself from it, because the wife has never noticed it. But once the husband makes this comment like, oh yeah, I just, his smell is a little annoying. It's kind of like radishes. And then when she goes on running some errands with Mr. Kim, all of a sudden she smells it too. And now she's bothered by it. So now you start to see all these
overly
ways in which,
so.
At least with respect to class and identity, that people start dividing themselves. And even when you have the poor, at least the working class and the working poor getting together, in the case of the Kims and the housekeeper and her husband, there is this sense, at least from the former housekeeper, like, hey, I can't blame you guys. I probably would have done the same thing. I just need to make sure that my husband's taken care of, all that type of stuff. But then when she sees an advantage that she can take by finding out that they're all related and that they're scamming the Park family, oh shit, I could use this against you guys and I can get back in the good graces with the Park family. I don't have to worry about you guys anymore. But, just even the means that they take in order to get rid of everybody else who's working in that house, whether it happens to be the driver, the tutor they don't have to get rid of because he's going off and doing his own thing. But just the idea that you're planting underwear in a car to get rid of a driver under this idea that how dare he have sex in the car?
Right.
I mean, that's the assumption that he did. It's just underwear had been left behind in the car. There's so many ways it could have been explained. Like, oh yeah, I was hooking up with this girl, and I grabbed her panties when we left, and I must have dropped them in the car. Oh, this got stuck to my pant leg from laundry because we have a group laundromat, and I noticed them on my pants, and I flicked them off. There are so many ways it could be done, but the thing that offended the Parks was, he had sex. What kind of a person has sex in a car? How dare they? And then, of course, this is all around the same time that they're literally about to have sex while their child is outside a plate glass window in the backyard.
Right.
Shining a light at them.
Yes.
Yeah, shining a light at them.
Well, getting back to the smell, because then that leads to sort of the big catalyst for the movie and the violent act that happens at the birthday party. Because I think it shows, because Mrs. Kim, now she has this idea in her head that Mrs. Park, Mr. Kim smells bad or has a smell. And then she notices it and he notices it. And this is after he's been laying under that table, hearing them talk about him and how he smells, and realizing this is a thing. And then, of course, when the moment happens when he's trying to help his daughter in the midst of this chaos of what becomes a very violent birthday party, and he notices that Mr. Park kind of plugs his nose because he got too close to him because he smells, that then he just gets up and strikes Mr. Park. But the great piece of acting, I don't know if you guys noticed that it's almost like he was in a trance, because then it's like after he commits the violent act against Mr. Park, Mr. Kim then has this look on his face, and then it's like almost like he snaps back into reality. And is almost like, oh no, what have I done? And now he's got to figure out, now what am I going to do? And so it's a really interesting thing, because I'm like, did he just finally have enough? Did he just get tired of hearing this man keep saying he smells bad or he smells a certain way? And then he it finally unleashes his anger out onto Mr. Park, and then kind of snaps back into reality. And then it's like, well, shit, now this really didn't help my case at all. Now I
now I got to find a new job.
now I've got to do something else, or I've got to come up with a plan quick. So I was just curious if you guys had noticed that, because I noticed that upon my second viewing, that there's a definite switch in Mr. Kim's face right after the violent act happens.
Yeah, he has an oh shit look on his face, clearly.
Yeah.
But it's not clear until later in the film is that even though he doesn't have a plan, he quickly puts a plan together and figures out how not to, at least have to deal with the consequences of what took place.
Yeah, I don't think he has a plan so much as he has an answer.
Yeah.
And, the way they show it, where he leaves the party and he goes around and then he goes back into the garage, into the darkness, down into the bunker, right? He literally scurries like a cockroach. Mm-hmm. And
yes.
Or like one of those stink bugs that they were talking about earlier in the movie. Yeah.
There was so much of me that felt bad about that, but at the same time, I was like, I know that's the point of the film, but I was just like, God, that sucks. You know, like
Yeah.
that's the only answer. And it's the right answer. Like, it's the answer any of us would have tried to take as well, right?
Right.
Like, it's the most obvious. But, man, the way they show it, just the way he, like, ducks under the half-open garage and disappears into the darkness, it was just so reminiscent of a cockroach disappearing to me.
Well, and like you said, too, the movie kind of gives you these hints and sets you up that when that happens, it totally makes sense.
Yep.
You have the one line of dialogue that she cut the CCTV feed so they didn't see her coming in. So he knows this. You know, he knows there's a bunker there. He knows that the Park family doesn't know the bunker's in there.
Yep.
You know, he knows, so he's able to like you said, it's not necessarily it's the answer to this problem he now has.
Well,
and just scurrying in there.
Even when they leave the living room after the sex scene, like, you know, they show the stairs that lead down to this garage that they're going to use at the end. So, like, they've given you the full layout of the place, leaving nothing to chance. Like, you know that this is possible. So, yeah. I think that's great.
Yeah. I think I'm at the end of my notes, but this is a hell of a movie. It's in my top 10 for 2019. I think it's just really great. I love the director,
Bong Joon-ho.
Bong Joon-ho. I appreciate the accolades he's getting for this. His previous film, Snowpiercer, just to throw it out there for the listeners, if you guys haven't watched that, that's another one that really explores class in a different way. So I think this would even be an interesting double feature when both are available.
Very
Have
cool.
you seen Snowpiercer?
I have not, but
Okay.
I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I didn't realize that was him as well.
Yeah.
I would actually recommend all of his films. I think he's one of the best directors that we have today. So,
Who are you? No, I'm just kidding. Don, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Oh yeah. I guess we can get to the ending. There are a couple of movies, or at least one movie, I would compare this to, and it's a French suspense thriller horror movie, however you want to classify it. It's Delicatessen, where they have this kind of upstairs, downstairs, climbing the stairs to get to these different elevations within people in society. And then there is a Spanish movie called The Bar, which it's a group of people from different paths in life, at least from different vocations, but then different classes, all stuck in a bar. Then something happens and they have to escape. And that's all I want to give you with that. But it kind of has that same thing where they're all having to deal with, now they're on the same level. For some people, they elevated. For some people, that they dropped. They dropped as far as their station, because they all have to be on this equal footing in order to get out of this this desperate situation that they found themselves in. But going back to that idea of the plan, you have Kevin's character. After all hell breaks loose, where his sister sister's killed by the
husband,
the subterranean dweller.
Yeah.
She's killed. Kevin, of course, is injured during this time. Mr. Park is killed by Mr. Kim. All hell breaks loose. But actually, before I even get to that, with the whole setup for the birthday party, just screamed obliviousness.
Oh, yes.
It was, and this is right after this traumatic event has taken place in their lives, and they're getting these text messages about, oh, we want to have a birthday party for the kid, and we want to do this. So they have to go back to work like nothing has happened, and they really can't share any of that stuff with the Park family, because one,
Right.
they wouldn't get it, and two, they probably wouldn't care.
They would probably actually get fired.
Yeah.
Well, probably, yeah. It's like, well, if you can't be here to do your job, we'll find somebody else.
No, I mean, even if they knew the truth, they would get fired for that.
As far as where they were, yes, definitely. But even when you're following around Mr. Kim and Mrs. Park, while she's on the phone and running the errands with her, and she's talking about, oh, we're just gonna have a little get together. It's gonna be nothing. We just want to celebrate his birthday. It's gonna be a special occasion. It's nothing too special. We're not gonna do anything. And they have like a cellist, They
Yes.
have they
Yeah.
have all these decorations. They want the tables set in a crane's
In formation.
wing pattern.
Yes.
It's all these things that you see. It's very over the top, but for them it's nothing. And while I was watching that scene, it just made me feel, as far as in Mr. Kim's shoes, that idea of it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. It almost seems as though he's hearing that and feeling the sense that I'm nothing. Like, I'm being dragged out for this thing. This is nothing to you, but it's something to me. But it's, that tells me where I rank, or at least with the importance I have in this situation. But when the birthday party takes place and all the violence takes place at that party, Kevin gets injured. He and the mom get arrested for forgery, and he doesn't laugh it off. But if you're an audience member, you kind of laugh it off because they get virtually no punishment, but they've lost a father and they've lost a sister and a daughter.
Yes.
And for them, that's the real thing that they've lost. And somebody on the outside would say, "Man, they got no jail time. They just got probation. What a win." And you, even as an audience member, you almost ignore the fact that the dad's missing and the sister's dead. Just because of how they seem to kind of write it off, just to make you detached as well.
Well, even the reveal that the sister is dead is almost like an afterthought, because we don't know until it's like they're just standing there and it's like there's her photo and we realize, oh, she died too. So it's sort of, even the movie shows it as sort of this afterthought.
Yeah, they're going to the mausoleum to look at it, look at her remains, and there's no pomp and circumstance to it. There's none of this moment where there's this mourning about her and what happened to her. I mean, it's a very violent death. But Kevin, it seems he starts trying to figure out, I need to find out where my dad is. I need to find out what's going on. I need to do something. He goes back to the house, learns Morse code, and understands that his dad is sending a message. And what's great is he gets this information about the dad, and this is why I was saying that idea of a plan earlier with James, is that idea that the dad figures out, I'm taking the information that this other guy left, I'm going to see if it can work. And that plan, or at least that answer to a situation, leads to a plan on the part of Kevin where he sends him this plan, and then we turn into a narrative where Kevin has gone to school, he's got a good job, he's got money, he's bought the house, and he gets his dad out of the basement. And then you are completely fucked by the ending because you realize it was all in his head, and it's like, I've got to do something. And right then you have that moment where the dad's like, don't plan anything. Plans are useless. But it hasn't destroyed his son's idea of like, well, I got to do this for you. And for me, looking at this, what you start to see is at least the family, the importance of family itself, and the idea that it's the son's responsibility to take care of his family. Because he's the last responsible male in that family. His dad is confined. He's the only son now, or the only child now. So it's his responsibility, when he could easily say, you know what, fuck it, I'm out of here.
Right.
I'll go get some more forged documents and I'll go to America, or I'll go somewhere else.
Right.
Kevin should be glad he was not in America, because South Korea has extensive universal health care. And his bills following that attack, if he had been in America, I mean, you want to talk already not having anything.
Here's the Parasite sequel.
No, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I felt that way at the ending, because it did for me when I first saw the movie. I was just like, oh, yay, this is going to end on a happy note. And then it's like, well, fuck me. No, it's not.
I liked that it felt off. Like the way they present
it did feel a little off from,
The way they present it is so interesting, because if you notice, Kevin and his mom are outside the house.
Mm-hmm.
That means that they don't actually have the house.
Right.
Right? Like, to me, that's a big tip that this isn't real.
Yeah.
And it's dad coming up on his own because he's still healthy enough to do so. He's still able to make this big transition. And he comes out into a nice empty house and he walks to them. right? It's not them saving him. It's so wrong in how you would present this.
Yeah.
If it was what was really happening.
Yeah.
And I love that because you can totally buy into it, but they tip their hats so well that this isn't happening.
Right.
And yet it's still such a kick in the nuts when they reveal that it didn't happen. And it's great.
Yep.
Just fantastic.
Yep.
Don, you got anything else for us?
Well, I was going to say it was funny messing with my wife during this scene because she was sitting there and like, oh, this is, and then it switched and I looked at her, I was like, were you really looking for a happy ending in a South Korean movie? Did you not see Train to Busan?
Yeah.
So even when because for me, even that scene where Kevin, it wasn't even the issue of them being outside for me. Kevin didn't look right. It looked like how we imagine ourselves in a dream. As far as like, there's something.
Yeah, his hair was fuller, and going back to complexion, he was a little bit lighter. Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I get he's trying to age himself. You know, there's some time that's taking place, but it doesn't look right. Something's not right here. But yeah, I like this movie. You know, even reflecting on it when I watched it, you know, I kept sitting there thinking like, well, maybe I'm streaming in the wrong movie. Maybe I pulled up the wrong one on Amazon because the way it starts out, because it's roughly about 45 minutes to about 50 minutes before you start getting pulled in with all the other stuff that's going on. But I think it's as the director said, and I'm glad that he said it, which was, you will be exposed to so many great films.
Yes.
If you can get over that 1-inch obstacle called the subtitles. And he's completely right. I mean, I love watching these films. I love watching horror films from other nations because you have these cultural pieces that get thrown in, but you have a lot of universality with them. I mean, there aren't too many countries that don't have class struggle, that don't have, you know, the people that are trying to make ends meet, or at least try and survive, you know, at the margins of society. You know, whether it happens to be folding pizza boxes to make a couple of dollars, or it's, in this case, trying to come up with some way to actually get the system to work for them, or get somebody's prejudice to work for their benefit.
Right.
I like that literally everyone in this film is a parasite. Whether they are taking advantage of the rich, taking advantage of their family, taking advantage of their workers, taking advantage of a place to live, taking advantage of whatever, every person, even the people that show up to this fucking party, are parasites. And I love that so much because it's all about perception and who you think is the parasite. And I think that in and of itself is honestly hard to pull off. To make every single person have something that they're using from someone else is just great. My one and only problem with this film, because I believe that this film is almost perfection, I hate that both tutors want to bang the 16-year-old.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we haven't even brought up the daughter. And
there's not much to bring up. She's boring. She's literally there to be a sex object. And I have an issue with that, honestly. Like, if it had been the first tutor, it makes sense story-wise. If it had been the second tutor, Kevin, it works. Making it both of them really, I don't want to say it pulled me out, but it just made me go, what the fuck's the point of that?
Well, is it because Kevin's taking on the role of his friend? So is he seeing her as a way to bring up his station? Like, well, okay, eventually the jig is going to be up, right? The gig is up. Like, they're going to figure it out. But if I elevate myself to this level and she falls in love with me, you know, can she convince her parents then to let me be a part? So there's his parasitic.
I would dig that if that's what he had told his parents. It's the fact that he gives the exact same boring ass speech that the first tutor gave. As soon as she's in university, I'm going to ask her out. Like, no, fuck you. That bothered me so much that it was like
fair.
it was like word for word.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And I'm just like, what? Like maybe it's supposed to be symbolic that he's literally taking other people's lives,
right?
But it really felt weird to me, and it's the only thing in this movie that really felt that way to me, where it was just,
Well, and that wouldn't have worked because like you said, the daughter is boring, but she's also an afterthought within the family because dad's just like focused on work and he shows up to finger his wife every once in a while. And
what a scene, by the way. I was like, maybe I just watched too many American films. I'm like uncomfortable watching this.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But so, and then mom is son's clearly the favorite. She's all about the son. That the daughter is almost, because even when they make the like ramen noodles with the sirloin, and he doesn't want it, dad doesn't want it.
Nobody offers it to her.
And mom eats it. And there's that whole scene where she's like, you didn't even ask me. I like it too, mom. She's like, oh, quit your whining. Like she's just such an afterthought even within the family.
Yeah. I don't know. Don, what about you? Anything to add to that?
No, but I definitely have to agree with the idea of the daughter being the afterthought. Even though she is older, you think that she would have at least, there would be a little bit consideration for her. But no, I mean, I've expired my notes as well. I like the film, and now I'm making sure to see if I've checked off everything, at least from Bong Joon-ho, to see what I could probably watch next, because a few of these I've looked at before.
So while you do that, I'm going to do something I might regret. Brian, do you have anything to add?
I think that Bong Joon-ho has made a really American movie, and I think that was on purpose. And he has made one of the most like vicious indictments of like classism and like capitalism that I've really ever seen. And the fact that like just everything ties into it. The only thing that and I've been so happy to see it be getting all of this love and like doing so well in America, because it's a great film, and like there's a lot of great films that come from South Korea. I've been a big fan of South Korean movies for a very long time. And so like, if like stuff about the culture and stuff like that, it sort of actually answers some of the questions about why the daughter is an afterthought, because the daughter is an afterthought in that culture. It's very similar to like American culture, where it's like the daughter's supposed to get married off, the son's supposed to be the successful one. The only thing that I really wish they would have taken the plunge on is nominating some of the actors for this film, because like they nominated Bong Joon-ho for everything basically, but like Kang Ho Song, who has been in a bunch of his films, who plays Mr. Kim, is like just like the heart and soul of this whole movie.
Oh yeah.
I think that the daughter, So Damn Park, is very good, and I especially think Yo Jong Jo, who plays Mrs. Park, is amazing in this film. Like the fact that she's not nominated for like Best Supporting Actress,
oh no kidding,
is like a travesty to me. So like, people were saying like, oh, it's a down year for women, and I agree to a certain extent for American films, but like if you go outside of the American films, it's actually quite a very good year for women. It's just like there are no good American roles, and that's definitely a problem. But like I think he has made as close to a perfect movie as you can make. And it's really made an impression on me. And I'm glad to see that people are understanding the symbolism of it, because like I was really worried that the subtext of this film might be lost on American audiences. And it really feels like the right audiences found this film and gotten behind it. And that makes me very happy, because like there's no reason why we can't have big international hits that come from somewhere else. I mean, like all we do basically is export movies to every culture out there.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no reason why we can't import some of those films that are like because like some years, like this year, I think the best movie is a foreign film. And like my my top 10 list is very top heavy with like foreign films this year. And like, it's just, partially it's like, South Korea has a very sort of Americanized culture. They do sort of like parrot American culture a lot. And the fact that Bong Joon-ho has worked back and forth between South Korea and America, and I love that he just jumps back and forth and makes these great films in both places. With like international audiences. Like that's what made Snowpiercer so exciting. And so like I would really, really like if you want to jump into another one, Okja's playing on Netflix right now. It's got another really great international cast in that one. Tilda Swinton, Jake Gyllenhaal, lots of people. Paul Dano. There's a bunch of people in that movie. And then I would very much recommend The Host, which is probably the movie that he got sort of known for, which has like a real sort of interesting take on like climate change and, things of that nature. So I've been nothing but impressed with Bong Joon-ho. I think that it's a really exciting time to be a film fan right now. And there's some young or like just getting into middle-aged like directors that, between like this and like some of the other like new directors that we're just getting right now has been very exciting. And I'm glad to see that Bong Joon-ho is really getting like his, like recognition. And it helps that he has like, famous fans like Donald Glover famously was like putting on, screenings of this so that potentially it could get nominated for like an Oscar. And, he's a member of the Bong Hive and all that. Love the fact that it has a name and everything. I am totally a member of the Bong Hive. I'm going to make all sorts of jokes about, bong rips when we do this on our best of the year. And it's a special film. I'm really glad that it's getting like its audience.
I want to say really fast, going back to what he said about subtitles and how many films will open up for people once you get past the 1-inch letters. My big problem with subtitles has always been my own inability to pay attention for long periods of time. I purposely saw this in the theater instead of Amazon for that reason. Once I can't have my phone and I don't have my kid running around and my cat's not climbing on me and I'm not eating and doing whatever else and I'm really locked in, like this film in particular hit me in a different way where I didn't even notice I was reading like 3 minutes in. It's so weird. And it's just been a while since I watched something with subtitles where I didn't have distractions. So like I watch stuff at my house, so I don't normally have this experience. But being there, I was so lost in it that they could have been speaking English 90% of the film. It was crazy to me.
Well, and it's kind of a long movie. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and it doesn't feel that way.
No.
Like I even remember after I saw it the first time, I'm like, they get the runtime wrong on this, right? Like it just felt like it was like a normal 90-minute movie, because you just get he does such a nice job of setting up this world that you're in it and you just forget you're reading.
But so I just want to say, if you have friends that don't like subtitles, tell them to go see one in a theater and see if it makes a difference, because when you don't have the options
of being distracted.
Being distracted. Exactly. It made a huge difference for me. And I'm going to go out of my way to replicate this whenever I can now. So, I don't have anything else. So, Don, do you have anything?
No, I'm pro subtitle, so And for that matter, anybody who's against them, I just say it's just time to get new friends.
It's always time for me to get new friends.
I do subtitles for English television shows and movies. So
Shelley, do you have anything that you want to add before we?
No, thank you guys so much for having me on and talking with me about this. This was really great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for picking this film. It was fantastic. And thank you for being here. Brian, thank you for hovering and adding some thoughts.
I got to drink my whiskey, so I'm happy.
All right. So, Shelley, tell us where we can find your podcast and what you guys have going on right now.
All right. As we said at the top, I am the co-host of the BS Movies podcast. You can find us at bsmovies.co. You can find us on Facebook of BS Movies Podcast. I'm on Twitter at Shelley BS Movies. Brian's on Twitter at BS Movies Podcast. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, all those major platforms. Wherever you find your podcast, you can find us. And if you are in the Phoenix area, we will be doing a live screening of the Blues Brothers at the Film Bar Phoenix on Friday, February 21st. And we've also got, if you're in Tucson, the BS Movies Roadshow. We're going to be screening Ferris Bueller's Day Off at the Loft Cinema on Sunday, February 16th.
At noon.
At noon.
Very cool. All right. So I guess that about wraps it up. So next week, I'm not sure what we're doing, so you don't get to know yet. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we will see you next week on the Necronoma.com.